How we doing, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Richie Hicks Jr. Sports Podcast. I am your host, Richie, and tonight we are going to be speaking on our continued draft analysis for the NFL. Today we will be honing in on the AFC and NFC North first-round picks. And that team out in Cleveland does not pick in the first round, so we're going to hit on their second-round pick. We're going to speak on where we believe these teams should be going position-wise and if they should be trading forwards or backwards. We're going to get on that. New York Rangers, New Jersey Devils, timeless East Coast rivalry in the NHL started with the fisticuffs. We're going to hit on what led to that melee at MSG. My New York Yankees are enjoying a terrific start to their 2024 season. A wonderful, wonderful road trip that we are going to hone in on as well. And we've got Mr. Big Shot as well as Vinsanity getting enshrined into the Naismith Memorial Hall of Fame, which will be going down this week. So we're going to revisit some of their best career moments. With me today, my man, Mr. Mike Zappy, out in San Antonio, Texas. How's it going, bro? Good to see you.
It's really weird out here in San Antonio, Texas. I'm seeing a lot more Houston fans than I am seeing Cowboys fans right now, especially after the big trade that took place today. It's such a different vibe in Cowboys Nation right now. At this point, the way my buddy Matt put it, everything that's going on, it's just pure comedy. It's comical. Like, what's next?
Yeah, both Diggs brothers are now in Texas, but I do believe that many a Cowboy fan probably figured they would both have a star on their hat. That is actually the story of the day. We've got Stefon Diggs heading to the Houston Texans, and we're going to speak on what went wrong. Why did Buffalo move on from their star receiver? There is definitely something to it, and we are going to actually open up with that. Zappy, I know that for a while you have discussed this on many a show, and I do believe that the actual price was not all that hefty.
Hefty? It was highway robbery by the Texans. I mean, you gave up a second-round pick to bring in a guy like Stefon Diggs, where people will say he took a step back and Khalil Shakir took over the team's number one. Yes, that is true. But teams still had to roll coverage over to Stefon's way, which is supposed to allow people like Khalil to take over and become a star receiver.
Mm-hmm.
Man, a second-round pick, and then what was the other? I believe they got back a fifth and a sixth, if I'm mistaken. Something along the lines of that. But you know, this is exactly what all in looks like. So, yeah, it's a 2024 sixth-round pick and a 2025 fifth-round pick to go along with Stefon Diggs they're getting back while giving up a second-round pick in next year's draft. The one thing here with Houston is they are taking on the entire salary of Stefon Diggs. I love it for the simple reason that DeMeco Ryans is not a coach that's going to stand for his antics that we have seen him do with Minnesota and how he was acting with Case Keenum and how we saw him as of late with Josh Allen. I mean, we saw what happened yesterday as I was talking about the whole they're going to move on from him. He sends out a tweet or he was replying to a tweet where somebody was saying, referencing that Josh Allen would be Josh Allen even if Stefon Diggs was not there. And he responded to it, and he's traded hours later. Like, I like it because, you know, Buffalo's saying we stand by our quarterback, but I don't think it's going to result in anything good. I mean, right now they don't have a receiver that scares me on that team. You're going to rely on Dalton Kincaid, a second-year player, to become a 1,700-yard receiver just like that? Absolutely not. I mean, as far as the Texans go, you're putting him into that offense that already featured Nico Collins and Tank Dell. You throw in Joe Mixon to go with Dameon Pierce, and they brought back Dalton Schultz. I mean, CJ Stroud he's licking his chops right now, getting ready. And not to mention with a young defense that's only going to get better after the addition of Danielle Hunter. I mean, all they really need to go out there and do is get a cornerback. And I know we're not talking about their division, but man, great trade for Houston. Bad for Buffalo. It just proved today that they were ready to get rid of him, and it didn't matter what it cost them because they're still taking a $31.5 million dead cap hit after this trade.
You know, Zap, I think as football fans, we could all agree, seeing the many Buffalo failures in the playoffs, that while, obviously the quarterback position has the wins and has the losses. They get all the glory. They usually get most of the heat when things don't go their way. I think it goes without saying that, Josh Allen has truly carried this team through and through. He's seen his defense gradually erode into just an okay unit when at one time they were actually elite. If you look at Stefon Diggs after week 7, no 100-yard games down the stretch. When you look at the back of the trading card, the numbers look good. But when you look at how he tailed off in the second half of the year, you've brought to my attention your feelings on how Shakir has outdone Diggs many a time. Big game, Gabe Davis also out of the mix in Buffalo. So it's an interesting thing here because similarly to the Los Angeles Chargers, they're going to be looking for 2 starting receivers as well because it's going to be a complete facelift on offense. I do believe this much. A guy like a Dalton Kincaid, and at the rate that Josh Allen does look for his security blankets, so to speak, I do believe that Kincaid can very well have a 1,000-yard receiving season and be a guy to grab in our fantasy leagues. But, I think it's pretty obvious that Buffalo's going receiver in round 1. And we spoke about these guys just last night, but a guy that I think fits them well. Now, granted, we're going to be highlighting the North, but I do want to speak on this since it is a topic now. Do you think they go to FSU? He's got the height. He's got the route tree down for the most part. Pretty good hands. I think after contact, good. Leaner frame, but after contact, could be a little – guys still got to put on a little bulk. Talking about Keon Coleman. What do you think?
I mean, yesterday I mentioned him, and I'm going to stick with it. I said that looking at the offense, looking at what McDermott needs for that offense, I say I still stand by Xavier Worthy or Adonai Mitchell to put him in there because you're talking about Adonai Mitchell, a guy that can go up there and win the 50-50 balls. You're talking about Xavier Worthy, a guy who not only did he set the combine record, but he can literally force you to spread the defense out. That's going to allow Dalton Kincaid to have great games, a la Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce. We've seen this before. You can't, in my honest opinion, I think it's got to be Adonai Mitchell and even Troy Franklin. Is Keon Coleman for me, at least for myself, he's kind of fallen a little bit.
Franklin's like what, 5'9", right? Roughly.
Yeah, he's a smaller guy, but
okay.
Again, a speedster that can open up the field.
Mm-hmm.
I'll say this, man. We're going to learn a lot about Josh Allen now. We are.
Oh yes, we are.
A lot about him now, because things were very nice when you have a guy of that talent, that skill set that can go out there and demand double coverage throughout the entire game. You cannot find that every day. So this is a big move when you, especially considering that you look at everything that the Jets have done in the offseason. They're in prime position to not only add to their offseason, but set themselves up for the future as well. I mean, Buffalo, Dallas, hey, you guys really are taking the part of winning the offseason. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, when you look at the value coming back, it makes you wonder if the Bills should have maybe pulled the trigger on this deal, say a year or so ago, where they could have got more for Stefon Diggs. I think Josh Allen's going to be all right, but I do think there's some rough days ahead for Buffalo before things get better. You don't replace a guy like that in 1 year, even if you hit right at that position. And not to mention, this is a team which still needs a little love on the O-line. And this is a team that has to get younger in their front seven.
One thing that I actually have been thinking about in regards to Buffalo, there's a team out there with this receiver that is very similar to Stefon Diggs, where he's now to that point. And I mentioned it on NASA's show that I think A.J. Brown needs to be traded. But if you talk about a team that makes a lot of sense for an A.J. Brown to go to, I think that's perfect right there. Especially if they're able to go into the draft and draft Brian Thomas in the first round, where now you can hold AJ as a trade commodity. And
so you think the whole we're repaired and things are okay, you think the Eagles are still holding that out to pick up a receiver of that caliber early and still move on from Brown?
It looks like poop. It smells like poop. Tastes like poop. It's probably poop. I think they're going to move on to it because no matter what, I think he's the kind of guy that's going to talk his way out of the locker room, no matter how talented
he certainly did his due diligence last year. And, there were certain antics on the sideline that I don't think highly of. And it's not because he's an Eagle and because he's a rival of both our teams. Regardless of whatever sideline, it's not cool. But as the other guys go in this trade, the team that wins this trade, the Houston Texans, you alluded to Joe Mixon. I think he's primed for a bounce-back year. Plus, he gets some relief with having Dameon Pierce back there with him. I look for a 50-50 split between those two, kind of play the hot hand. Nico Collins, very good last year. Dalton Schultz, still in the state of Texas, had some choice words and choice opinions of the Dallas Cowboys. Don't think he's winning over a lot of fans there. But,
he was right.
I didn't say he wasn't. Right. But, he's still, yeah. But I appreciate that about you. I do. I appreciate when, you can keep it real about your team. Like for instance, when our season ticket holders were totally taking a dump on John Mara for making Appreciation Day about a medium Pepsi after putting those teams on the field. Give us some Johnny Walker Red. You give us an Uber home.
Not to change the subject, but Jerry Jones is really treading down the wrong river because now, especially after the city of Kansas City voted against providing funds for a new stadium for the Chiefs, and now you see the mayor of Dallas saying, "Come back home." I mean, Jerry does not want that to happen. And that's why I sent that earlier saying, hey, Jerry won't let this happen, but if he's not careful, it's going to happen. And all of a sudden, whew, that's why I think he's selling the team. But anyways, going back to that, yeah. Houston, man, I love what they are doing. I love it, dude. I really do. And now they're in a position that when you look at all levels of their team, safety, cornerback, linebacker, defensive line, offensive line, quarterback, running back, receiver, they have every element there. All they need now is someone opposite of Stingley, and their secondary will be set. Will Anderson and Daniil Hunter, I mean, Will Anderson's about to go off for 15 sacks this year.
And you have some depth in this draft where you can get a quality corner in latter rounds, and it doesn't necessarily have to be quote unquote the dude. Now, where is Houston picking in round one? I know we're going to elaborate more on the when we hit on that division, but where are they picking exactly? I think they're round
they no longer picking the first round because they traded their first round pick to Minnesota a couple weeks ago.
Thank you. Okay. At any rate, I would not be the least bit surprised if the Texans potentially go corner in round one because of your point about how on so many levels and layers the roster is filled out. Now, I know that it's way too early to make predictions. You still have a draft. You still have injuries that could occur before these teams come back all the way for the 2024 season. But I must admit, on paper and given their schedule, the Houston Texans look like a prime candidate to not only prevent the Kansas City Chiefs from winning a third consecutive Super Bowl, but just talking regular season alone, a team that could be a good candidate to have the best overall record in the American Football Conference. Now, there's a lot that can happen before then. But I must admit, it's got to be weird because, like you said, as a Yankee fan, I'll say it like this. There have been not a ton, but some junctures of my fanhood where the New York Mets were doing things a little better than us. It's not a long book, but the point is that it feels weird when you are the established team of your city and the other guys are kind of doing it a little more. And, if you really look at the Houston Texans' history, I think you could say it's been a little bit of a mixed bag. I mean, what happened the first time that a Houston Texan game happened? Preseason, Jeremy Shockey ran this guy over, and they were like, did he kill him? You get their first pick. Carr took beating after beating after beating after beating. Poor guy. It happens when you come to an expansion team. They had the great Andre Johnson that had a phenomenal career, but unfortunately just didn't have enough around him. Guys like Arian Foster, who made a weird transition post-career. We all know what D-Hop has done. They have a mixed history than the Deshaun Watson saga. But to get a guy like C.J. Stroud after that whole Deshaun Watson saga is pretty phenomenal. And I must say, right now, these guys are a really good organization. And I expect big things out of the Houston Texans this year. D'Amico Ryans is going to continue to get these guys close. And when you consider, we'll flip it into the Chiefs for a moment, the Rashee Rice apology, I don't know, man. That Rashee Rice apology just doesn't seem all that sincere, if you ask me. And when you turn yourself in that many days later, there's just no sincerity attached to it. This is not the type of thing that I think will end his career, but it may end his Kansas City days. Because from a character-based standpoint, if the Chiefs keep this guy in there, it's going to look really bad.
I don't think we're going to see him in a Chiefs uniform. This dude is facing a lot of felony charges.
With the right lawyers, he can
course
get that work down, because the one thing that he has going for him is that nobody died and nobody has life-altering injuries. I think civilly, he's going to have to fork up some cash. But as far as the trajectory of his career, he'll probably have to go to classes. And I'm not saying that that's what it is. He's a young guy. He did something very stupid. You always want to hope that something could be learned, and you be thankful that the people that are injured, it wasn't worse than injury. We saw this. I said it, I think last night, if I'm not mistaken. Andy Reid's son, that horrific car accident ahead of the Super Bowl where Mahomes and Brady, headlined. And that took a lot away from that. This is not the kind of stuff that the Kansas City Chiefs want going into a season where they are potentially going to three-peat or try to three-peat. And it's not just about it. It's just so more to it. I said it on last night's show. The culture issues in the NFL. But as far as this Rashee Rice thing goes, one would have to think that now the Kansas City Chiefs may very well want to add someone alongside the recent addition Hollywood Brown, because you can't depend on Rashee Rice. And if they bring him back, and they won't. Kareem Hunt was a staple in that offense when he screwed up. They got rid of him quickly.
There's a guy I'm going to be keeping an eye on, especially once the draft passes. That's OBJ. Because now he can fit in both KC and Buffalo, both teams that need a receiver, because as of right now, we don't know anything about Rashee Rice as far as what he's going to be facing. We're not going to know anything for a while, whether it's a 6-game suspension, 10-game, or a season or less than that, whatever the case, because he still has to go through due process on the civil side of things, and that's going to take time too. I think OBJ, that's just another guy where, hey, we were visiting it last year with DeAndre Hopkins in Kansas City. They didn't do it. And, it paid dividend. But they still drafted Rashee Rice. Are they going to go that route again where they're going to rely on another rookie receiver for 2 consecutive years? And, and then I will say this one thing about Houston. As talented as this team is, they in my opinion, they're right there now with Baltimore. as a team that could dethrone the Chiefs, but I am not going against the Chiefs at this time. Because in my opinion, best coaching staff in football, and we saw it on display on Super Bowl
Coaching
Sunday.
matters. Coaching matters. And I'll be honest with you, it only takes one day in the playoffs. Matchup-based standpoint, a lot can happen yet. Flat-out matchup, I think the Texans offer the most resistant player for player, scheme for scheme, coach for coach for the Chiefs. But do I think that the Texans match up well with the Steelers or, say, the Ravens? Not necessarily, and that's what makes all of this so very interesting. I think the Pittsburgh Steelers are going to have quite a say in this if Russell Wilson is able to perform. And don't forget, if he doesn't, he'll get yanked. Justin Fields will have the opportunity. But the way I look at it is the Pittsburgh Steelers, and nobody's going to, that's another guy. You talk about coaching. That division is loaded with coaching. And might as well, we'll keep it here. Let's keep it here. And we'll get back to the other topics towards the end of our show. But we've got analysis coming for you based on the North divisions. AFC and NFC North draft talk. And it starts with a huge story that's been going pretty much since the combine, before the combine, junior year, whatever have you. Chicago Bears, first and ninth picks. They did something very controversial when they traded Justin Fields. We all thought that Marvin Harrison Jr. was a shoo-in to go number one overall. They were going to add him with DJ Moore, and things were just going to really take off. They traded Justin Fields. Whoever you draft, whether it's Jaden Daniels, whether it's Caleb Williams, or you do something real wacky and trade back, which I definitely don't think will happen, they have to learn a new playbook. You're going to start backwards before you go forwards again. And I said it many a time. Detroit Lions, Green Bay Packers, the happiest guys about that trade. Now, as far as the number one overall pick goes, me and you differ in opinion, to my knowledge. I believe that they will indeed draft Caleb Williams. I think you believe that Caleb could fall as far down to 3.
They still haven't come out and said Caleb Williams is the pick.
No, they have not.
We've seen it in years
Nor
past.
Should they?
Announced.
Nor should they?
Well, I mean, they shouldn't. You're right. But there's still the element of surprise, and we've seen it time and time again. And where I look at Caleb Williams, he's got so many questions, and a lot of it has to deal more with his character than his talent. I mean, we know on the field he's a very talented quarterback, but he struggles reading certain types of defenses. But we know about his character, and like I made the comment yesterday about the Bears or the Browns on draft day. This is exactly what it is. Why weren't people at your birthday party? That's what I look at with Caleb Williams. Yes, the pick's going to be Caleb Williams, but I just have this funny feeling that Jaden Daniels is right there, or JJ. Both of them are like, well, What exactly did Caleb do? At least Jaden Daniels played in the SEC.
Yes, literally when you said Caleb Williams, he talked about talent, I was already in my ears thinking about a reply to you. And I don't like to punish guys constantly if they don't play in the best division in football, in college football, but the SEC is leaps and bounds ahead in terms of overall talent. Now, sometimes that's not always the best thing either. Because when you have 5-star athletes everywhere, sometimes it can mask your deficiencies as a quarterback as well. But Jaden Daniels, when I look at the metrics of his game, the one thing that I want him to do for himself, for his safety, for his career, is to, in a healthy manner, gradually put on a little more bulk, because you're playing with bigger men now. These are grown men now. And but I think he has all the tools. And it doesn't nearly seem as reckless if they were to go with Daniels. Now, that's what I'm saying if I was running the team. But having said that, I still believe that the Bears are going to take Caleb Williams.
Yeah, I think they're going to take Caleb Williams too. I mean,
and I think it's the wrong choice. I will go on record and say that.
Yeah, I mean, we've already been on record of saying that they should have kept Justin Fields. So it's going to be Caleb Williams. You don't build this up for the so-called next Patrick Mahomes and not take him.
The audacity! Why would you even say that? Patrick Mahomes is a once-in-a-generation kind of talent.
Well, but no, the pick I'm more interested in is number 9, because I look at them, and when I look at Chicago, I look at it as a team that, yes, they need a quarterback. That's obvious. Number 1 pick is going to be a quarterback. They need an edge rusher, and they need an offensive lineman. And I think they're in prime position where if Dallas Turner is there, if he falls past the Falcons,
that is definitely the guy that you would consider for that position.
I like the position they're in because you look at it, edge, offensive tackle, number 9 pick, and just based off of what we talked about before, number 5 is going to be, who did we say? Marvin Harrison or that, whatever. Number 6 will be Malik Neighbors. 7 will be Joe Alt. 8 will be Dallas Turner unless the Falcons go somewhere else, meaning it's going to be Dallas Turner or Fashanu at number 9 for the Bears. So that's the way I look at it's going to be the Bears' first 2 picks.
Yeah, Fashanu, you would think would fall there if that's the case because Alt's not falling that far down. I'll tell you the God's honest truth when I keep looking at these first round picks. I think Alt might end up going to Tennessee.
Yeah, that's where I've been mocking Joe Alt this entire time. I mean, when I look at Joe Alt, and if there's a player I want to compare him to, surprisingly enough, it's Taylor Lewan. And
makes sense,
we saw the successful career he had there. If you look at the history behind Notre Dame offensive linemen drafted, they lead the way in college football history for having the most success with offensive linemen drafted.
Yes,
so why not go out? You go out. I mean, when you look at the tight ends and you see everything they have invested in the offseason to help out Will Levis and to ensure we're going to see if he's going to make that year 2 leap.
Yeah, because you're bringing in talent as well now. Because you already have a future Hall of Famer in DeAndre Hopkins. You bring in a guy that I believe is perfect as a number 2, and now you have who did they pick up at tight end? Did they make a move at tight end in free agency? I know that.
Well, they brought in Calvin Ridley. They traded for L'Jarius Sneed.
I love that. He gets paid, and he gets to show that he's not just a product of a good system. That dude is a baller.
And then, of course, the Tony Pollard addition to team up with Tyjae Spears, which I like that one. I think they did bring in a tight end. I want to say it was someone – I have to double-check it. I'll get back to you on that one.
I want to call myself out on something stupid. I really wish I would have not released Tyjae Spears early in last year's fantasy season, as he could have been my second running back to freeze because I am freezing Mostert. But, you did tell me. I had to make a move, as they say. The Minnesota Vikings picking at 11th and 23rd in this first round. This is a team that can go a lot of ways. I mean, when you consider that they have made it kind of clear, maybe not as clear as the Giants, but pretty clear, that they at minimum have a piqued interest in a player like a J.J. McCarthy. I know yesterday you and Idris were in agreement that they should go the route of Michael Penix. But this is the thing. You can – sorry to interrupt you. You can go secondary help at 11 or get an edge, and you can still get Penix at 23, even though on most metrics certain people would feel that you were reaching for him at 23. I think he's more aligned in the 30 to, say, 38 bracket. But, sometimes it does essentially – sometimes you jump in the draft because of team need and because it might be too much of a headache to trade back to get the max value, so to speak.
So what I want to ask people is, would Washington been in the national title game if Caleb Williams was the quarterback? I think no.
I tend to agree with you. No.
So, that's why when I say what I think of Michael Penix, I think a lot of Teddy Bridgewater before the injury. He was a great quarterback coming out of college, a guy that would stand in the pocket. He could run, but he had pinpoint accuracy. And, I mean, the dude, if he needed to move, he can move because he had quick twitch-like feet.
I see where you're going here. You think that Minnesota, taking a little peek back to their personal history, looks at this player and might be getting a little nostalgic.
It could possibly be, man, because we know they want to trade up, but we can't go with the assumption that they've made that trade until we see it announced. So until that day comes, they're picking at number 11. And like you said, because those are the two top position, I think, cornerback, quarterback. And I think it would be in their best interest to, if you're willing to trade up from number 11 to acquire a quarterback, but you can't find a suitor, then you take a defensive back at 11, and then you go trade up from 23 to ensure yourself that you get Michael Penix, just in case someone is a little sneaky with you to try to pick them up, you know?
I tend to agree.
Because you look at Philly, okay, they're good with quarterback. Miami, I wouldn't put it past them. The Rams, I wouldn't put it past them. Jacksonville, yeah, this is the year that we got to find out about Trevor Lawrence, and why not draft the quarterback to be safe just to secure yourself? The Saints, they need their quarterback of the future. Las Vegas, they need their quarterback of the future. Denver, they need their quarterback of the future. But if we see Michael Penix drop past that, you trade up a few spots and you get your cornerback, you get your quarterback, and you resign Jefferson, and let's go to work. Because Michael Penix, to me, if Justin Jefferson's there, he likes Penix. So that's the way I see it with this team, man. I like I said, they're trying to work it up. We know they're going to try to trade up to number 4, possibly as high as number 2. If they do go that high, then we know it is in fact for 2 players. I think it's JJ or Drake May. I don't think it's Caleb or Jaden Daniels. You look at Kevin O'Connell, you look at the type of system he runs, which quarterbacks are better suited for it. I think Michael Penix is number 1, in my honest opinion. I think JJ is up there as well. I think Drake May actually fits that offense as well, but I don't think Jaden Daniels is suited for Kevin O'Connell offense, personally.
Now, do you believe that the injuries should be a deterrent? Because, there's literally no way to forecast if a player who has a legitimate history of injuries will be able to overcome them at the next level. And I'll be honest, and I'm going to requote Brett. I have no reason evidentially to believe that, other than the fact that my gut tells me that this kid Penix is not going to get that horrific injury or be a bust because of his injury history. I think that he has a Warriors mentality, and he's going to pay dividends for whoever drafts him. Just my opinion.
I love Penix. When I look at Caleb and I look at Michael, Caleb is 6'1", Penix is 6'3", I believe. The only thing that hurts Michael Penix is he was at Indiana for 4 years going through injuries each season. And then we see that he transfers to Washington, and then he just blooms because he finally got to stay healthy. But my only things that worry me about him, and this is it, is you look at him in that Michigan game, when you can get pressure on him, it's not a fun sight. And that's stuff that can be corrected with the right coaching. Man, I just love Penix in Minnesota. I really do. I think it makes so much sense. There's no
you and Idris, the way you guys painted it, it did make sense. Because I understand the importance of reuniting guys at the next level if you're given the rare opportunity. And with Rome Odunze potentially falling to my team, and that would mean that you didn't get JJ and you didn't get Jaden and you didn't get Drake. I understand the allure, but really keeping it back to the skill sets, I do hear what you and Idris are saying. Because with Penix's injury history, you don't want him running like the way he would run if he was in the Brian Dable offense. So I do get the point that you boys were making yesterday. But my point was it might be a bit of a boost to team these 2 up if New York were the place. And I'm not saying that you can't team these 2 up in Minnesota, but I just don't see Odunze falling all the way down to 11, but you never know.
If Odunze falls past the New York Jets at 10,
and then you could trade JJ and really ball out on a big old trade.
No, seriously, if somehow Rome Odunze goes past the Bears at 9, if he somehow goes past the Jets at 10, Minnesota would, if they don't trade up and he's there, you take Roma Dunze, then you go get his teammate and you create possibly Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase.
No, I get it. It is that same kind of situation. I want to veer this away from here, and we're going to continue this, but I have a hot thought I want to speak on quickly with this New York Rangers fight with the Devils. Rempe needs to fight when he's called on in terms of carrying on tradition, and while I love the intensity, this is what I'm going to say. I think it's selfish. I appreciate the camaraderie of my team for all dropping their gloves and fighting with their guy. And I understand that goons are necessary in today's NHL and every era of NHL hockey. And I also understand that you have to have your players back. But I think it's selfish when you consider that the playoffs are around the corner. And by forcing that many ejections, you had a lot of guys playing that were essentially supposed to be resting. Now, with my initial comment, this is the thing. When you get called out from an opposing player to fight you because you injured one of their men and concussed him, and if you're the fighter, that's when you fight. Just keeping it real. I'm a Ranger fan, but I don't like that metric of what happened here. I hate the Devils, but I respect tradition. I feel like he should have fought him then. You don't drop the gloves, fight him then. You know, their fight went the longest. Rempe and McDermott. The rest of the guys were done dancing with each other, so to speak. But Peter Laviolette said it best. You got to do more than fight. He needs to hone in. You can't fight everybody that bumps you, so to speak. And I think this kid has a little growing up to do. We're chasing the Stanley Cup right now. We're not chasing an MMA title. But
not to interrupt,
we
need to pause. The world needs to know this. It finally happened. Shohei Ohtani has hit his first home run as a Dodger. It just happened right now.
Oh, okay.
So we gotta make sure that everyone knows this. The face of baseball has hit his first home run as a Dodger.
The face of FanDuel? The face of Hard Rock Casino?
No, if it was FanDuel, he'd be in the clear. He wouldn't need transfer funds.
Wait, did you say the clear? You gotta be careful with these words, Zappy. Now you're implicating him to Balco again.
Don't care. No,
they flipped it around. They call it collab now.
So I think that was a very interesting thing because I didn't read into the fight. I just saw what happened, and then I tagged you in the video, and I was like, all right, I need to know what happened. Well,
I knew that it stemmed from the previous fight, the previous incident, I should say, going back a month or so ago. But the point I'm making is that when you get called out by one of those other team's fighters after it and you decline and then you kind of do it like that, I don't like it because I feel that you put your teammates in a precarious position where you're forcing their hand having to fight. I have another burning thought here before we continue this NFL chatter. Just bear with me, guys. I got to talk about my Yanks for a second here, Zap. What a road trip. When you think that, Juan Soto has officially become a Yankee with his heroics, he influenced the outcome of each game in Houston. Carlos Rodon, second quality start of the season after being truly embattled and not winning over the New York Yankees fans with good reason. He crumbled under a lot of pressure from the media and the fan base. He's pitched really well, two consecutive starts. Nestor Cortez had a worse second start than his first one. That's our lone loss of the year. Now you get a day of rest. You go back to the East Coast after starting the year 6-1. Aaron Judge hit his first bomb. Alex Verdugo has his first Yankee moment. The former Red Sox gave the Yankees a 2-run lead in the top of the 10th before Clay Holmes surrendered the lead back. And then Judge comes up big where he had to yet again. And the Yankees and Aaron Boone, I always get on Aaron Boone's ass, but I got to give Aaron Boone some credit here. Because of the war of attrition, The Diamondbacks were in a position where they had no other choice but to have a pitcher hit because they were out of players. Boone did something very ballsy. He loaded the bases with 2 outs, potential game-winning run on second, up a run, to pitch to the pitcher, and he's basically telling his pitcher, they did pull Holmes after 23 pitches, which I support because he's been getting a lot of work in. Point to be made is you're telling your pitcher, we got this guy. Let him make contact. He ain't going to do nothing with this. Very genius move and very ballsy move on Aaron Boone's part. But best believe if somehow, some way, that pitcher just got a little bit of wood on that ball and flunked it over short or found just a little spot in the grass, it would have been a completely different narrative about, oh, Aaron Boone's an idiot. He moved the guy up 90 feet. It was a good move. Walking Montero and going after the pitcher. A quality move. Aaron Boone's hitting all the right buttons on the early part of the season. And as much as I get on him, I have to give him credit for that.
I think he's doing a great job, but I really think this team is feeding off of Juan Soto.
I do tend to agree.
Yeah, that guy right now, season's early, but he's got to be in the lead right now for MVP.
He was approaching 40 games for reaching base, a streak that was actually broken today. That speaks volumes about the kind of ball player they got.
It really does. I can't. Right now what the Yankees look like, they look like a good team. If they could keep this going and you keep just holding it down like this, playing the way you're playing, and when Garrett Cole comes back, you're not going to need to make a deadline deal. So it's very interesting. I like the way they're looking. I like the way the bats. I want to see Aaron Judge get his bat going because right now he has come off to a very slow start. Yeah, obviously, like we said, he had his first home run today. But I want to see a little more from him, especially when you have Juan Soto batting right there next to you. I want to see more from him.
Oh, I tend to agree. I really tend to agree. This is the thing. I think when you get a superstar player that joins a player that from a talent-based standpoint might be considered even better than your superstar player, possibly, that's the whole leadership value of an Aaron Judge. Taking a little bit of a backseat to get Juan in there, make him feel comfortable and say, hey, you're one of us, and I don't mind taking some of the light off of me and some of the accolades off of me if it means winning, bro, because we're here to win. And I appreciate that about number 99. I really do. In that regard, that's why he's your captain, because he has some of that Munson in him. He has some of that Mattingly in him. He has some of that Jeter in him. And don't get me wrong, I love Juan Soto. But Aaron Judge has that different kind of makeup of a professional athlete that makes a lot of the old timers appreciate that because he is a throwback in terms of the mentality. Don't get it twisted. He wants to get paid fairly, but Aaron Judge could have made a lot more money than he did. Being a Yankee meant a lot to Aaron Judge.
Definitely.
And I appreciate, I really do. As a fan, and in today's times where loyalty don't mean ugats, I really appreciate Aaron Judge. And I got news for you, man. Juan Soto, when he is honed in, because he was not honed in San Diego. There are too many selfish people around him in that locker room.
Way too much.
But when he is honed in, he very well may be the best player in Major League Baseball. We're going to pause on some of this draft talk because I wanted to make sure that we got this in, and we'll see where we line up at the end of this segment here.
Definitely.
Mr. Big Shot and Vinsanity, soon to join Basketball Immortality. I'm going to start with Vinsanity. There's a lot that could be said about Mr. Vince Carter, the cousin of Tracy McGrady. He brought a different kind of energy being drafted out of the University of North Carolina, playing with the Toronto Raptors, a guy that I gravitated to on the fan level. I think the greatest thing about him is that he just kept playing and kept playing and kept playing and showed a lot of guys that grew up watching him that he still had it. It goes without saying that the iconic slam dunk moments from him in the contest as well as in game will always be burned into my memory as something very awesome. In terms of professionally getting close to winning, I'm going to hone in on the 2000-2001 season, an unfortunate miss in the corner at a clear basket where he could have defeated Allen Iverson's Philadelphia 76ers, who eventually lost to Kobe and Shaq's Lakers. But congratulations, Vince, a guy who, in my opinion, grew up after burning some bridges in Toronto. I think he had the shadow, like many other UNC greats, of the greatest UNC player, Michael Jordan. It's hard when that follows you. And there's only one MJ, but Vince Carter was very special. And he was like top of the line off the rip coming out of college, whereas the other fella, Mr. Big Shot Chauncey Billups, did things the hard way. Failed draft pick by the Boston Celtics. Kicked around a little. Looked like he was just going to be a serviceable point guard. But when he took his game to Detroit and Larry Brown and he helped create the attitude of the Bad Boy Pistons 2.0, I believe that from a grittiness standpoint, from a clutch standpoint, and when you look at the characters, the Rasheed Wallaces, the Tayshaun Princes, Rip Hamiltons, and others, Chauncey Billups did so much work. And, you think about Zeke. Chauncey Billups is in the conversation, too, amongst the 2 or 3 best to play the point guard position for that Detroit Pistons organization. 2 completely different ball players, but 2 guys that I'm very happy for that are getting their day in the sun in the Basketball Hall of Fame.
Man, 2004, 2005, that Pistons team was good. I mean, they were great. And I look at what they had with Ben Wallace, Rasheed Wallace, Tayshaun Prince, Rip Hamilton, and then Chauncey Billups leading the way. I mean, that team was amazing. But, man, I remember watching Vince Carter and Antoine Jameson in college at North Carolina, thinking to myself, like, wow, these guys are going to be great. And then to see him get drafted, to see him in the 2000 dunk contest, and in my opinion, gave us the greatest dunk contest in NBA history.
Yeah, that was different. That really, really stood out. And I just have a high reverence for him because when you think about his cuz, Tracy McGrady, who was another phenomenal player, and you can make the argument that McGrady was a better scorer and a better player than Vince possibly. But the thing is, Tracy didn't last as long, and for Vince to keep coming back, he was a phenomenon coming in. He got humbled in a big way by Toronto when he found out they didn't love him as much as he thought. And he was kind of big-headed early on as a younger guy. But to just pass the jewels along from locker room to locker room and just be such a respected veteran and to give something back to those that come after him speaks volumes of the kind of man Vince Carter is. And congratulations, truly. Truly.
No, definitely. A huge congratulations to the 2 of them. And obviously, it's not official yet. It'll be official on Saturday during the Final Four when they will make the actual announcement. But 2 guys that without question, more than deserve it. Vince Carter, I mean, a lot of people didn't even know he ended his career on the Hawks. It was a guy a role player getting a few minutes in here and there. So, and Chauncey, I mean, we see how a good coach, a guy that's, again, he needs talent on that Blazers team.
And it speaks to growing up, too, because a lot of guys have these bona fide egos that they don't want to even be remembered as a bench player, and they'd rather just retire early. So when I see guys that hang on longer that used to be superstars that now they're role players, it shows a profound love for the game. And when I think about a guy like Chauncey, not only am I going to big him up for his time in Detroit, were it not for a Robert Horry clutch 3, they go back to back. I also want to shout him out for doing something that no other player was able to do. Carmelo Anthony's best teammate is Chauncey Billups when you really look at his career trajectory in terms of helping him get to be the best version of himself. And although it was only for one short season, the next guy I would give that accolade to would be Jason Kidd, the 1 year with the Knicks. Were it not for a Melo shoulder injury, I actually believe that the New York Knicks had a legitimate shot to beat LeBron's Heat that year. But point to be made is Chauncey Billups made people around him so much better.
I gotta put, not to change it, but to Carmelo, I gotta put J.R. Smith and Chandler up there too as best teammates. But no.
What I mean by best teammates to enhance him as a player. That's the best way to say that. Not best teammates. Best teammate to enhance him as a player. Because every great scorer needs that great facilitator. I think that's the best way to put it, at least coming from my end.
Can't forget about one of the greatest facilitators in Allen Iverson either. Because, I mean, they were teammates together. Don't forget about that.
And people forget because they try to give AI a hard time and just say, oh, he never saw a shot that he didn't like. Allen Iverson, as he got older, honed in more so on being a little less selfish with the ball, so to speak, with all heart with AI. Love AI, always have, always will. Coming up on the 8-minute mark. So we're going to expedite a little bit here, but we're going to try to fit this all in. We've got the Bengals picking at 18. A lot of ways you could go here. This is a team that took a step back. Give the offensive line the proper love. Get the best tackle on the board. That's what I got right here for them.
Yeah, I think, I've heard you talk about J.C. Latham to Dallas. I think he's going to be a Bengal. Some reason.
We're like-minded, dude, because I didn't want to mention his name because I'm saying, man, if they saw the show yesterday, the day before yesterday, yo, Rich, is that the only offensive lineman you know? No, but it's the only one that I think should be taken in around that time. Yes, but I would be surprised if he got past 18. Yes,
but I also wouldn't be surprised if they go the receiver route. As we know, T. Higgins is on the franchise, could possibly be traded.
Correct.
Boyd is also no longer on the team. So, in my opinion, you got to protect Joe Burrow.
Absolutely.
We talked about this after the Super Bowl loss. You have to protect Joe Burrow. We talked about it the year after in the AFC Championship loss. You got to protect Joe Burrow. And here we are talking about it again a year later.
It's
you got
to protect
Joe Burrow.
It's scary when you make the investment early on. And I understand why they did it. I've said this on shows in the past. If you look in the catalog, you'll find it. Jamar Chase, LSU connection, da-da-da. And I get it. They lit the league on fire together. But I'm not a Bengals fan. I'm not a Bengals sympathizer. I don't even like the Cincinnati Bengals. We have some history with them. We're not even rivals. They are dirty. But I will say this. I wanted Penei Sewell to be the guy that they should have picked. He's over in Detroit doing his thing. But I think that they're at that point where they're like, okay, we got to make sure we protect Joey, and that's what they're gonna do here. Pittsburgh Steelers picking 20th. Huge rivals of the previous team we're speaking on. Once again, this is a team that could go a couple of different ways as well. When I think about what they need to enhance, it's never been Pittsburgh style per se to get like the all-world receiver. They get more of like the working man's receivers. But I do believe that wide receiver could most definitely be on their radar in this situation. I feel confident for the most part with their defense. If I'm trying to comb through and say where can they get better, I would say the secondary could get a little more depth. Maybe not necessarily a day one starter, but guys that can hone in on sub packages and continue to enhance their game. Guys that you can have the patience for to kind of groom into the Steeler culture.
Well, yeah. It's funny you said Steeler culture. Steeler culture. I think of guys like Jermani Dawson. I think of guys like Pouncey. I think of the culture. Alan Faneca. I mean, there's two guys, in my opinion, that make so much sense at number 20. It's Jackson Powers, center out of Oregon, and Graham Barden, center, guard, tackle out of Duke.
That's a good shout because that's a lot of versatility he brings too.
And that's who I want Dallas to draft. But if I'm looking at Pittsburgh, they, like you said, they need secondary help. But man, if you get Powers Johnson to lead the way at the center position. And we have seen how important center is. We saw Chris Jones get this astronomical contract, which means defensive tackles are now that
and
important.
He's worth every penny. We saw what they look like without him. He dictated some big plays down the stretch.
Absolutely. And so you brought in Russell. You got to make sure you have him protected up the middle. So yes. I would say center, Powers Johnson.
And not to be disrespectful to Russell, even more so if you put Fields back there at some point because he's the younger player and the guy with the higher ceiling because Russ has limited time left in this league. Green Bay Packers, I might be reaching here on this one because I still think this might be a hell of a reach. But I believe that he fits their scheme ever so well. Does Edgerrin Cooper jump into the first round and get drafted by the Green Bay Packers, a team that I think could use a little help sideline to sideline in the linebackers?
Nah, I think they're going to go O-lineman or cornerback.
Well, we know about Bakhtiari's finish over there.
Mm-hmm. And we know Jair Alexander was hurt a lot of the year last year.
Yeah, that's a little scary. That's definitely concerning. I don't necessarily know if TJ Tampa will still be on the board. Maybe in his practice room. I don't know.
I like if somehow cornerback out of Queon Mitchell, if he falls to him out of Tulane or Kool-Aid.
Kool-Aid McKinstry, that's an interesting pick as well.
So, because I think they should go secondary. I really do. I mean, offensively, they're going to be a much, much more potent offense with they're the second youngest team in football, youngest team in the playoffs, and we saw what they did. I mean,
dude, they were a couple of plays away. And I got news for you, dude. Not trying to take nothing away from the team that we're going to speak about next. But the Green Bay Packers, if they would have beat the 49ers, I wholeheartedly believe would have been in the Super Bowl last year because I think they would have beat this team because that secondary needed some help. We're talking about
who was Super Bowl one?
Exactly.
Those Chiefs, Packers. That's who I have playing in the Super Bowl next year. Chiefs, Packers.
I think you got it halfway right. All right, the Detroit Lions, short and sweet. Anybody that plays in the second layer of your defense, this team needs to improve the secondary immensely.
Immensely? I mean, is that even the term you want to use? They need to improve it. Yes. Cornerback, or go get another receiver from Amon-Ra, get another edge rusher to team up with Aiden Hutchinson.
They're fine at receiver. They better get somebody that catches the ball running backwards.
Or get a big defensive lineman like a Tavondre Sweat in there that's going to be right next to on first and second down that's going to stop the run.
Detroit's got many ways to go. Legit. I mean, he could go anywhere from like 20 to like 35. It really just depends on team need. Tavondre Sweat, I'm not going to lie, dude. When I think about our second round pick, I would be thrilled if he was still on the board. I'm not sure if he would make it all the way back to 47.
He's not. He's in a top first half of the second.
Right. So when I think about even if the G-men, like, we'll discuss that later, but him and Dexy together, man, that just seems so freaking awesome. Yeah, go get some secondary help. This is a late enough pick where I believe the Baltimore Ravens you're good at tight end. How do you feel about the O-line? Do you need to get younger there? I think that's where the love goes. 20 seconds or so, Zappy. Wrap her up.
Offensive line. I love Jordan Morgan, tackle out of Arizona. I think he makes a lot of sense at Baltimore. He's going to be there. Another guy is Amarius Mims. We saw how they succeeded with Ronnie Stanley. We saw how they had Jonathan Ogden, a big left tackle. Amarius Mims, a guy that can come in slowly and be the guy. Boom.
Great job, Zappy. For Michael Zappy, I am Richie Hicks Jr., and I am really stoked that we were able to fit all this in. Until next time, we out.